Choosing a good size for your pixel art can be quite difficult. In this video, I'll be going through what canvas sizes will best fit your pixel art, how to quickly size tile maps, and finally, how to be efficient with your limited pixels. I've labeled all the sections of this video with timestamps, so if you want to skip to a part or you've come back for a specific section, just click the links in the description. Also, I just want to say that a lot of the information in this video is from my head, so there might be some parts that aren't correct to strict pixel art rules. Instead, they're just my take on the topic. Sizing your character. Let's begin by talking about character sprites. Generally, I think that most of your tile maps and other sprites should be based on your main character because your protagonist will be the asset that players see the most. And this way, everything will be scaled correctly from scene to scene. In game design, a common way for developers to build a scene is to use something called a tile map. A tile map or tile set is the grid of squares containing all your individual assets and can be easily used to generate terrain and levels. In most cases, all of your individual tiles should be the same size, and the content of the drawing should be contained within the space of the tile. For a cartoon or more comical game, you want your character to be about the same size as a tile, maybe a little bit smaller. For realistic games, usually the character will be fairly small compared to their surroundings, so a character design smaller than a tile would make sense. Also, the size of the protagonist in relation to the world can be used to create drama. Larger surroundings and antagonists can give the game a dramatic, dangerous feel. To contrast this, making your character pretty big in terms of both the screen and the world can give the impression that your protagonist is more competent. Choosing a tile map size. So, once we've decided on how big our character should be relative to our tile map, let's decide on a size for our tile map. There are some common sizes for tile maps that you might have heard of before, and they go up in powers of 2. The smallest is 8x8 pixels, a really uncommon size that is too small for most applications. Most of the art you can create at this scale will be very stylized and therefore better for games with a simple idea. If you're making a lore-heavy fantasy game with emphasis on items, tools, and character expressions, 8x8 might not be the best size for you. However, if you're just making a simple platformer game, this size is perfect for beginners. Going up one size, 16x16 pixels is probably the most commonly used size for pixel art in general. This is the best option for both top-down and side-scrolling games, because you can get a decent amount of detail without having to draw a large number of pixels. 32x32 pixels is less common but still a really good choice for many games. At this scale it becomes easier to give your sprite more detail, however if you're developing a game, it'll take much longer to complete all the assets you need. If you're just starting out with pixel art, I would recommend doing a couple characters in 16x16 before moving on to 32x32. Finally we have the larger canvas sizes, 64x64 and upwards. While characters of these sizes can lend themselves to more artistic sprites, it's important to remember how big your protagonist will be on the screen. If the tile map is large in resolution, then each pixel will become smaller, making the art less like pixel art and more like realistic imagery. This can remove the charm of the game, as the main appeal of pixel art is its retro aesthetic and simplicity. This graph shows the relationship between the quality of the artwork and the resolution. It peaks at around 16 and 32, which I believe are the optimal canvas sizes for pixel art, and dips at around 64 where you start to get a cross between realistic images and pixel art. Here you can get a very strange scale where it's almost big enough to be a realistic image, but you can still see the individual pixels. Materials at different scales. Once a tile map size is selected, you can begin work drawing. At such a small scale, every pixel matters, so we need to be very selective with what we keep and what we throw away. For different sizes, each pixel will represent a different thing. For example, in this 8x8 rock tile, one pixel is used for an entire stone, whereas if you were to draw the same tile in a 32x32 size, multiple pixels could make up the same rock. So, when drawing with a bigger canvas size, use multiple pixels to illustrate a material. When using a smaller canvas size, less pixels can indicate the same material. You can see here how the rock tile looks in each tile map size. Using your pixels. Drawing characters at small scales can be quite difficult, and including all the aspects you need can be even harder. Before we draw a character, we first need to decide what is crucial to be included. Generally, the main purpose of a sprite is to visually represent what they're doing and for their size and animations to make for enjoyable movement and gameplay. So, if the character doesn't indicate what they're doing or isn't fun to control, I don't think it will be a successful sprite. In this example, I'll be drawing a ghost in 16x16 pixels. For a ghost, the two necessary features are the facial expressions and the movement. Let's start with the silhouette of the ghost because it's important that the character is recognizable from its outer shape. Then we need to decide if we want an outline or not. An outline can help separate the sprite from the background and add some definition, but it will use up more of your pixels. For this sprite, we'll use an outline because the outer shape is an important part of the character. If you were doing an 8x8, we wouldn't use an outline because there just wouldn't be enough space. Then, a facial expression can be drawn in the center. Because we are working with such a small scale, some 2x1 pixel rectangles can represent the eyes. At this stage, it might be a good idea to experiment with a couple different expressions. I'm also adding some hands because I think they might be useful for weapons later down the line. Then, you can fill in the areas with some flat colors before adding some shading. Use the solid white color to make some highlights where your sprite will receive the most light. Finally, just go on with a couple more colors to further push the shadows back and bring the highlights forward. That's our 16x16 pixel ghost. While there may be some details that aren't quite perfect, it's important to keep in mind that our image will be quite small in a game setting. Animating your character. For our ghost, the crucial part of the animation is the depiction of the movement. We'll need to show how the ghost is made of a fluent material. When I'm animating a character, I usually like to start with the outline. This way it's easier to focus on animating the movement rather than the rendering. In this case, I gave the bottom of the ghost some movement once it had stopped, to give it a loose, flowing effect. Once I was happy with the movement, I rendered each frame and the animation was complete. In this case, I used the image from before as a guide for rendering all the frames. And that's how to make a 16x16 pixel sprite. Summary. In summary, when creating your tile maps and assets, you should base them off your main character design and size, as this is the one recurring asset of your game. Tile maps are extremely useful for quickly generating terrain and levels. The common sizes of tile maps are 8x8, 16x16, and 32x32. Very rarely is 64x64 used. When designing, keep in mind that the value of a single pixel will be different at different sizes. Always remember, the main purpose of a sprite is to visually represent what they're doing and for their size and animations to make for enjoyable movement and gameplay. Good luck with your pixel art, and I hope this video helped in some way. Hey, thanks for sticking around till the end. Special thanks to How Was Your Day for suggesting this video idea. If you want me to make a tutorial video or video in general about something specific, leave a comment below and I might get to it.